Hey, good morning, guys. Welcome to VA Friyay. Today, we're going to be talking about my experience with buying my first commercial property. And kind of going through what I experienced and what we had to do to get the deal done because we had to go a very unconventional way of doing it. But before we get right into it, dad joke. So, why did the physicist and the biologist get divorced? It's because they didn't have any chemistry. It's a really bad one, but it's the only one I can find today, so deal with it. Alrighty, so commercial property. Okay, so what led me to that point? So just so you guys know, the last 2 years I've been looking to find a place, to buy a place. And it was a place to move into, and one of my requirements was it had to be waterfront and a nice kitchen. The reason why is because I have a waterfront view in my small condo now, and it made no sense to move into a place that didn't have at least that. And the other thing is I had to have a nice kitchen, and because as you guys know me, I do really enjoy cooking. So we spent about 2 years. We went in and out of contract with a few places because one of them was a townhouse that was a new construction here in Kingston. However, I guess the builder went bankrupt and they stopped building, and then I guess they went up again, but it cost another $100,000 to buy, and I was like, not doing that. So we've just been kind of in limbo. And then at the earlier start of this year, I realized this lease on this office that we're renting is actually ending in August. And we're like, well, why rent when you can buy? So I talked to my agents. I was like, hey, can we look for a place, preferably waterfront, that could be a good building to move our office into? And then within a couple of weeks, we found the right place. Turns out it was their old real estate brokerage. It was this brokerage they switched from. And it's actually how I met them and stuff like that. So it was really cool kind of having this full circle moment when we were at this property, and it had a beautiful waterfront view. They did some really great work, upgrades to the city streets to have a sidewalk and all that stuff. So it just seemed like the perfect fit. So we put it in offer, and I obviously had to work with a commercial lender because it is a commercial space, and going through all of that. Commercial lending, just so you guys know, the as far as getting a commercial lender, that's easy. They're everywhere. But going through commercial lending is a very wild experience as someone who is in residential mortgage. The reason why I say that is they mostly care about the property, not so much about the person, right? So it's if you guys ever heard of it, it's something like how they calculate DSCR loans. So it's all about the income producing potential on the property. So when they're asking about information about me, they just had me fill out a form. And then I might have submitted some W-2s. I just told them how much was in the bank without actually showing them my statements. And that was really about it. I don't think they even asked for my driver's license. So they didn't really know I was a real person, which is kind of hilarious because in residential mortgages, we care a lot about the person, a little less about the property, which is very, very strange. So we went through that experience. I thought I was pre-approved, whatever it was. And then they asked for a lot of stuff about the building, the size, what I was going to do with it, stuff like that. So how that process works in regards to figuring out the numbers is they do what's called a DSCR calculation, which is a debt service calculation ratio, I think, something like that. Basically, what they're looking at is the mortgage for the commercial property versus the expenses on the property. So they're not, instead of DTI, they don't really look at DTI. They look at it's another version of DTI that looks at just the income producing potential of the property. So in order for the debt service ratio requirement to be met, let's say it's 1.25. Well, that means that the income producing potential on the property must be 125% greater or more than the expenses on the house. So that includes insurance, taxes, property taxes, home insurance, flood insurance, stuff like that, even maintenance and stuff. So if the mortgage is $1,000, that means the rent must be at least $1,250 or more. Now, let's say the numbers don't meet right away, then you have to come in more down payment. You can't necessarily buy your rate down with commercial loans, is what I was told. So that's the downside of it. So the only other avenue is to bring in the down payment or get more income from the leases, is essentially how it works. So that was a very interesting aspect of kind of going through that experience, kind of understand how they figure out if the house is lendable or not. And it's very just again, it's very different from residential when it's more about the borrower and making sure the borrower has the ability to repay. That's the term that's used for residential side. And then what's sucky was that we used a commercial lender at first, and then when we were 2 weeks into the contract, I told them everything 2 weeks before we got under contract, got at them everything they needed, told them everything where it was, stuff like that. 2 weeks in the contract, they said our credit council Illuminati feel it's a too high of a risk to lend in Washington, and we're like, why? And this was 2 weeks into the contract, so we are, full blown in. So I spent the next week trying to find a new commercial lender. I was able to find someone that was local, talked to them about it. They said they could do it. So we got with them. It wasn't until probably a month later we found out it wasn't going to work based on how they saw the appraisal and how their credit council Illuminati felt about the file. They said, on top of the 1031 exchange you're doing, because I was selling my duplex to put toward the down payment on this house. Most of these DSCR require some kind of a down payment of about maybe 15-20%, depending on the situation. So I was using most of the profits from selling my duplex to do a 1031 exchange into this property. And they had prepared me in the beginning that, hey, I may have to come in another $80,000 down, which was understandable. I was like, all right, I'm prepared for that. What the commercial lender came back to me, it took them about almost a month to 6 weeks to tell me this, was that on top of the 1031 exchange money, on top of the $80,000 that we told you to prepare for, you need to prepare for, you will have to come in another $185,000 down. So this is an $830,000 down. So let's kind of do the math real quick. $216,000 coming from my duplex, another $80,000. So we're at $296,000. Now they want another $185,000. So that's like over $400,000, right? Like $470-ish. So that's on an $820,000 commercial property. That's over 50% down. And obviously that I wasn't going to do that. And luckily at the time I was at a mastermind conference, and they were talking about the commercial lending space is not looking good for next year. So I told them, so what I was thinking is, if I go do this commercial loan anyway, I may even potentially just lose this place if the entire industry goes default, or I can lose the property now and get all my money back, and not to spend all this money. The tough thing was that my 1031 exchange timeline, it had to be used. So if you guys don't know, 1031 exchanges have to have there's a specific timeline that you have to use this money. So in the first 45 days, you can shop around, and as long as you get under contract within those 45 days, there's really no questions. After those 45 days, you have another 45 days, but you have to identify at least 2 or 3 properties or something like that. So when I say identify, you have to choose. You have to tell them, hey, these are the properties I'm looking to buy, and those are the only properties you're able to put the 1031 exchange into. So that's the timeline I was fighting against, on top of because at this point we were extending. We were supposed to close at the beginning of May. So we were extending, and we have to be out of this office by August. So we want to make sure we gave ourselves ample time for licensing and all that stuff, just general moving stuff. So this was probably about 3 weeks ago. It was a Thursday. And that's when that commercial lender told me about $185,000 more. The next day I was like, look, seller, I talked to my agents like, hey, this is the Hail Mary that I have to send in. I don't know if they'll take this, but this is about all I can offer. I can offer to pay off their $300,000 current mortgage, and I'd be willing to give them like $3,500 a month of interest only payments for a max of 2 years. And it'll be a balloon, which means I have to pay off the rest of it, which is the entire thing, of the rest of the purchase price at that 24-month mark. My plan is to refinance within that 2-year period. I just want to give ample time for a commercial lending space to chill out a little bit. So that's kind of essentially what we threw in there. Was a Hail Mary. We didn't, because before we pitched the whole seller financing option, and they didn't go for it. They didn't like it, and we're like, well, this is the only option, because I'm not going to get commercial lending. I can't get residential because of the income situation I had the last couple of years, and I wanted them to ask less about my income. So residential was an option, commercial lending was an option, seller financing was the only option. We got an answer back, I think that same Friday, and they were happy to take it. And I was like, whew. So we were able to get that figured out and close about 3 days later. So all in all, I spent about the same, about $300,000 to buy this commercial lending. Really, just about $80,000, $80 to $90,000 out of pocket that I had prepared for. And 216 was from the 1031 exchange. So now I own the space, and we have plans to renovate the detached garage into a office, and it's gonna be renovated. So the idea is that once this is all done, it's all said and done, everything's moved in, and income is producing, it should make me about the same as when I dropped the duplex, because the duplex would make me like $1,100 a month. But the plan is to continue to upgrade the property, maybe some more buildings. Also, all the renovations we're doing, because now it's has more income producing, it's going to appreciate the value, and hopefully the upgrades I have set for this year, the plan is to have it be worth $1 million property. So $1 million property by the end of this year. So I would basically take the $300,000 I spent and would have gained another 250 is the hope, like another 270. So I would hopefully double the money I've put into it is the goal. And then I'm going to hopefully look to take out a line of credit on the equity, or do some kind of a cash out refinance to get some of that money back. So that's kind of the plan for now. But I'm super excited that I was able to turn myself into a case study and share this experience with as many people as I can. Just say that, hey, it's possible. You just gotta be ready for it. So that's why I tell a lot of people the best thing you can do is be prepared as best as you can, and when the opportunity arises, you're ready to jump when it happens. So that's my story. So it's a bit of a long video, but it was just an interesting experience. I'm glad I went through it. It was more painful than thinking back. I wish we just started with the seller financing and just ended with that, because I didn't have to go through the pains with dealing with 2 commercial lenders. But it was it still was a fun experience to kind of share that fun side of it. Anyway, I apologize for a long video, but it was just that story. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Happy July 4th. We'll probably still do the normal videos. I'll be in California when I do these videos. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm still going to be working. There's one day I probably will be a little less available, which is July 6th. So just shoot me a text and I'll be able to get us an answer or respond as soon as I can. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Have a great week.